And good Thursday morning, Champ Chief Meteorologist Al Conklin, along with meteorologist Eric Garlick in the First Alert Weather Center with our latest version of the First Alert, where we cover a little more detail into some of these big topics. And of course, a hot topic right now is the tropics. We're getting another hurricane that we're tracking here. Thankfully, Eric, this one not going to impact the Carolinas, at least not directly.
I'm going to tease ahead a little bit
Yeah.
into what we're going to talk about as well. We're 80 days away from a big change in things.
Yes.
We're not going to go into any more detail than that. We'll talk about that coming up in a minute. We'll talk about the tropics first.
The countdown is on.
But
right.
80 days away from a big event that it affects everybody.
It affects everyone.
We'll
yes.
talk about that in just a minute, but let's get started with the tropics and a lot going on. Of course, Hurricane Ernesto is what we're tracking right now, and this is thankfully not going to impact us too much after just Debbie a week ago. But right now, winds at 85 miles per hour, and not much of a change from the 2 a.m. advisory. But looking at a little bit of drop in pressure, indicating that it is strengthening, and speed slowing down a little bit, actually.
Yeah, forward speed. Typically, as the pressure drops, you'll see the wind speeds actually increase somewhat. There's a correlation there, but it takes time. There's a little bit of lag time. One of the things this is fighting right now, though, Eric, is a little bit of dry air entrainment on the southwest side of it. And you can sort of see that. Where's all the robust combustion and convection? It's all on the north and east side of the storm. On the southwest side, over the Bahamas, there's some dry air that's being filtered on in there. And so that's hampering it a little bit. But having said that, it's over very warm water. And eventually, I think it's going to run out of this dry air a little bit. And also, it's just in a good environment. There's no shear there. So this is more than likely going to be a Category 2, possibly a Category 3. The Hurricane Center has been going back and forth on a 2 and a 3 on this as it makes a approach towards Bermuda. Now, good news is it looks like, again, a lot of that convection is on the northeast side. So it could possibly just do, well, some damage to Bermuda, but maybe they don't take it full on. I know you're going to show the track here in just a moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned, going back and forth between a 2 and a 3, a high-end 2, a low-end 3. Other than statistics and record keeping, not much of a difference. No. So something that we really need to be prepared for. So here's a look at Hurricane Ernesto right now. Category 1, 85-mile-an-hour winds. Pressure at 975, moving north at 13 miles per hour. So where does this take this? Well, it's going to be moving off to the north, and really kind of an easterly component to that north as we head into Friday morning, and then Saturday morning approaching Bermuda. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday on the west side of Bermuda. The northeast quadrant is, kind of the strongest side of the hurricanes, and something that, really impacts the impacts that you see on the exact location.
And Bermuda is one of those places that's literally just a dot out there. I think it's like 11 miles long and about 6 miles wide out there in the ocean. But because of where it is, and typically you hear us talk about in June, July, and August, the Bermuda high. Well, it's somewhere around Bermuda. But if that relents just a little bit, it always seems to be it's in that quarter where if they're not caught off the East Coast or up the East Coast and they're offshore, it's usually in that quarter. So they have a lot of experience with hurricanes, tropical systems. So this one looks like on this current track, it would go west of Bermuda, and that's not good news there because they'll take a direct hit then more than likely. And then from there, it moves on up. Now, the next spot that could potentially be impacted would be the Canadian Maritimes. They're sort of close to the envelope here, if you will. That cone gets a lot wider as you get farther away from where you are right now. And this is going out, early next week. So it could change considerably. But the couple of things to keep in mind. So why not coming to the United States? Well, that same trough of low pressure that has been persistent now for the last week and a half or so in the eastern U.S. that helped us get rid of Debbie is still in place. And so this will ensure that it stays offshore of the United States. Now, problem is, though, you notice the reds and yellows in Florida. What that's indicating is that rip current risk is already growing. It's a moderate to high rip current risk up to about Jekyll Island and Brunswick, Georgia today. You're going to see that expand northward and eastward through the Carolina coast at least tomorrow, and that will stay that way all weekend long. These systems have a way of just sort of emanating out, these waves, and so you'll see the rip current start, and of course the swells as well. Eric?
Yeah, and it's again not going to be a huge impact to us, but if you're heading to the coast, you're really going to want to know about that as we head into the weekend. But here's a look at the current rip rip current forecast and risk. Not too bad, but as we head into the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll likely see it into the moderate and at least moderate risk, if not high risk, as we head into Saturday and Sunday as this gets a little bit further north in the Atlantic.
Yeah, I've been sort of checking some of the discussions coming out of the National Weather Service in both Wilmington and Morehead City, and they both anticipate putting up high risk warnings starting tomorrow. They'll start to get that message out this afternoon, but they'll go into play tomorrow more than likely. And this is going to be an interesting setup because there'll be an easterly flow, and that's pushing that water up. So places like the Crystal Coast, down into Oak Island and Sunset, and all the way down Cherry Grove, all those places will be at risk. Even the southern outer banks will be at risk on this, and so I think you're going to see this be a big issue. And again, the weather itself will be fine, but if you venture into the water, just understand large swells, which of course the surfers are going to love, but everybody else, it could be a little bit dangerous. So you may see red flags down at the beach, meaning, of course, you're going to stay out of the water. The lifeguards will let you know about that, and if you continue to avoid them or try to go in the water, it can result in some beaches being fined by the police department, which in places like Emerald Isle, they actually patrol the beaches and they do issue citations.
Got to keep everybody safe, right?
Yeah.
And as we head into the peak of hurricane season, kids are going back to school, and we're going to start to see things really ramping up. So Ernesto, check it off the list. Francine is going to be the next one, and then Gordon, likely really going to start to see these names being knocked off pretty quickly. Kind of the unofficial peak of hurricane season is August 20th, and really ramps up as we head towards September 10th as well. So here's a look at the climatology when it comes to hurricane season, and you can see the dark coloring on the bottom near September 1st. That's when we typically see our most major hurricanes form in terms of climatology and record keeping.
Yeah, and those are the ones that are the Cape Verde storms typically. They're not the ones that form close to the U.S., but they travel towards the U.S. They get shoved westward on the trade winds and those currents, and that's what happens. Now, sometimes they may struggle. We saw that with Debbie. It was just sort of a cluster of thunderstorms. A wave, if you will, came west, got the stuffings knocked out of it over the DR, kind of struggled over Cuba, and as soon as it got off of Cuba, boom, there it went to Category 1, almost Category 2 hurricane, and at one point, and then of course we saw all the rain, and again, we talk about the wind speed, it's really the rain of most of these things. The wind speeds do a lot of, is a big issue, obviously. The stronger the wind is going to be a lot of damage, but it's the water that is the main threat. And we had, a tropical storm, we had, I think 2 or 3 fatalities now in North Carolina. It doesn't really have to be a major hurricane.
Right,
Eric.
yeah, you talk about storm surge, you talk about flooding, you talk about, the northeast quadrant of the hurricane or tropical storm,
tornadoes,
or really low pressure system. You got the tornadoes that you talk about, yeah. So really any of that, and then wind.
Any and all of it, yeah. The wind is one issue, but you can run from the wind. You can't run from the water. That's the problem. And when I say water, everybody's gotten the message now. I've seen a lot of studies on this. There are very few people that die from storm surge anymore because, thankfully, because they've gotten the message to get off of the coast, get away from salt water. The problem is inland, especially freshwater flooding, is taking more and more lives. We've seen more and more of these big, tremendous rainmakers, and that just, especially in a place like eastern North Carolina and South Carolina now, where we went from drought to saturated ground. If we were to get another storm here before very long, it's not going to take much to get flooding.
Yep. So that's kind of the look at that. And then looking ahead, looking at the next really 2-week outlook here, you can see a 20% chance of development between August 22nd and August 28th. So this is an experimental product issued by the National Hurricane Center, and they typically look from Wednesday to Wednesday, and they update it once a week. So this is something that we're going to, of course, keep an eye on, and we know this is where storms form this time of year as we head into August and September, so that's really going to be a place to watch as we head through the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is heavily weighted in climatology just because we've seen time and time again over the years, over the decades, where do these storms form at this time of the year? It's that zone right there. That's the battleground right there. So it's north of the equator, and they just come westward. So again, at the moment, there's not too much out there, but again, this can change in a moment's notice. And as we get closer to Labor Day, I can recall several Labor Days working here at WBTV, where we literally had as many as 5 hurricanes lined up at one time, and just a parade coming westward. So, and again, you know, if you only get one hurricane and it happens to come to your neighborhood, it's a busy season. But
yep.
Right now it does look like this is going to be a busy season.
Yep, and as we head into the busy season, we start to see our temperatures drop. Average high temperatures for the month of August down to 87 degrees. We alluded to that yesterday, built this graphic just to illustrate this a little bit. So we shave off 3 degrees from August 1st to August 31st.
Yeah, essentially about every week and a half or so you drop a degree, and then this really gets pronounced as you get into September. You notice what happens here. You start September 1st, you're in the mid to upper 80s, but by the end of the month, it's 79 degrees. And what this is an indication that, you know, the night's just getting longer. You start to get this cooler, dry air that comes into place from the northwest. And so you drop, you know, it gets accelerated. You get into the month of September and it's basically 2 degrees every, you know, 10 days. So this really starts to take off.
Yeah, just looking at a quick question on the Facebook. Rhonda wants to know the next hurricane name, Francine.
Yeah.
We covered that, and maybe you jumped on a little bit behind that. But if you want to watch this back later, we have the list of all of those names.
Yeah, Francine and then Gordon, and let's hope we don't get down, you know, towards the end. But we kind of feel like that might happen.
Yep.
And Wes wants to talk a little bit about cold fronts having a punch and really lower the humidity. Well, you know, we saw some lower humidity yesterday, and I think today's still relatively low, but consistently that's not going to happen until we get into the month of September, where we start to get these, you know, cold fronts come through. During the months of June, July, and even the first half of August, it's really hard to get a cold front to come through here. But now what's happening is, I looked at this earlier in the week, there's a lot of cold air that's starting to already develop at the North Pole. Well, why is that important? Because it expands, and as it expands, across coverage, what's happening is that, you know, the sheer weight of cold air pushes everything else out of place. And so as that pushes southward deeper into Canada and eventually the United States, it's going to set the storm track of the jet stream much closer to us. And so with a lot more ease, we get these fronts to move in. And typically that's during the month of September, and especially as we get into October, November, you know, the humidity level really starts to drop. It's always interesting to me as well, Wes, is that when we get 90-degree days here, Eric, in September. We get, you know, a handful of them at least, usually, and sometimes even into October. But there is a big difference between a 91-degree day on, say, Labor Day, and there is 4th of July, because usually the air is a lot drier. It just is different. There's no question about it. You know, it actually feels pretty nice. Yesterday we were 87, and it felt great. Yeah. You know, but if you get 87 with a dew point of 73, it's a different story.
It doesn't feel so nice.
Yeah, yesterday the dew point was actually 61, meaning the air was very dry relative to this time of the year. So great question, Wes.
Yeah, and parts of the Midwest are already seeing lows in the 40s this year. So
yeah, how about that,
we're not far away. And speaking of not far away, fall back.
Oh, it's unbelievable, right?
We're 80 days, so we alluded to this. We're 80 days away from November 3rd, and that's when we would set the clocks back, and we see a big change in sunrise and sunset times.
A lot of folks don't like that, you know, this idea of going back and forth here with, you know, settle on something, right? This debate's been going on a long time, but here's the deal. It's happening. We're going to have daylight saving time come to an end first weekend in November. So we've got these longer days now for the rest of August, September, and into October. But boy, as soon as we get past Halloween, it's game over, right? And it'll get dark earlier, that's for sure. A lot of folks don't like that.
5:26 sunset time, November 3rd.
All right.
Not much fun.
Yeah.
Summing up kind of the next couple of days, though, rain chances Friday and Saturday we start to see ramping up. Friday night into Saturday, we could see a little bit of activity coming our way. And then Saturday, we got a first alert in play for that as well. Here's what it looks like Friday into Saturday. Saturday is highly dependent on what happens Friday night, the domino effect. We talk about it all the time. But at this point, it looks like we could see some storms making a run at the mountains and then kind of fizzling apart as they head into the I-85 corridor, which could be a focal point for storms to develop on Saturday.
Right, slowly. So if you're watching this, I would be concerned that anywhere north and west of I-85, you could get a thunderstorm tomorrow. Maybe not so much during the afternoon. It may be in the evening by the time it gets down into the Piedmont, and then they sort of run out of gas. But that's something that we're a little bit concerned about, is how does this set up for Saturday? And Saturday we do have that first alert in play. And of course, we know we also have a lot of activities going on here in Charlotte, including the Panthers-Jets game. And Britannia is asking about the evening forecast for that game on Saturday. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And as you mentioned, Eric, Saturday is one of those days where it all depends on where these boundaries set up and how much instability there might be. We know one thing, it's going to be hot and it's going to be humid. We're forecasting a high of 91 degrees, and there is at least a marginal risk for the entire WDB-TV viewing area that we could get at least some severe thunderstorms here.
One or two
Saturday.
severe storms,
Yep.
lightning, heavy downpours, gusty winds, and flooding, all possible with that. So here's a look at that 7-day forecast. As we kind of talked about on Saturday, 91 degrees, that's 60% chance of rain. There's going to be the possibility of thunderstorms if you're heading to the Panthers game on Saturday.
Yeah, there's a possibility, but again, at this point, does not look widespread. We will update this forecast for you as we go through the next couple of days here and let you know about that. But again, that is a 7 o'clock kickoff. It doesn't look like the rain would be widespread enough to cancel it, but could there be a delay? Sure. If there's lightning near the stadium, you know they will do that. And again, for fans that are going to maybe tailgate previously or prior to the kickoff, just understand you may get into some thunderstorm activity. Still storms around on Sunday. Then we may get another break from the humidity with fairly cool temperatures coming back Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Eric?
Al, thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it. You got a cutting to do. So
we got to run back
always
to
working.
WBTV.
And thanks for joining us.